We know that when we add or subtract fractions, we have to have common denominators. We know how to get common denominators. You worked on that in middle school and in elementary school. So what if we're working with rational expressions that don't have common denominators and we want to add or subtract them? Well, today I'm going to show you how you can find a common denominator and then use that in order to add the fractions together. Take a look at the first example here. We have x minus 2 over 8 plus x plus 1 over 4. We want to add them together, and when I see addition, the first thing I think is I need a common denominator. Well, the common denominator, 8 and 4, the smallest thing that both of those go into, the least common multiple, is 8. So what I'm going to do is multiply this fraction here by 2 over 2. When I multiply that second fraction by 2 over 2, I have 2 times x plus 1 over 8. And now I have a common denominator. I just have to be careful and follow this through a step at a time. Once I have my common denominator, now I'm going to write everything as one fraction. I have x minus 2 plus 2 times x plus 1. Now there is a little bit of work to be done here. I have to begin by distributing, and then I can combine like terms. I distribute the 2, that gives me 2x plus 2 in addition to what I already had. Now I combine my like terms, x plus 2x, 3x, minus 2 and plus 2 cancel each other out, and 8 on the bottom. So the sum of these two fractions is 3x over 8. Once again, when I looked at this, I just looked at the denominators and said, how do I get a common denominator? And then I went through, and instead of just working with numbers like I did in middle school, I'm simply working now with binomials, trinomials, and things that are a little bit larger. In our second example, we see something very similar. We have 2 minus a over 3a plus 2a plus 1 over 5a. We need a common denominator. Both of them have an a, but we have a 3 and a 5. The least common multiple of 3 and 5 is 15. And so I'll multiply the first fraction by 5 over 5, which I've done right down here. The second fraction by 3 over 3, which I've done right here. Notice when I do that, 5 times 3a is 15a, and 5a times 3 is 15a. That allows me to get a common denominator. At the top, I have to go ahead and do some distributing and moving things together. So I now have common denominators. I can write them as one fraction, and I have to use the distributive property. This is 10 minus 5a plus 6a plus 3 over 15a. Now I combine my like terms. 10 and 3 is 13. Negative 5a and 6a is 1a. So I have a plus 13 over 15a. I cannot cancel these a's at all because the a plus 13 is one thing. They go together. So I just have a plus 13 over 15a, and we can't forget our undefineds. It's undefined when a equals 0. Now if your head is spinning a little bit at this point, that's perfectly normal. Just hang in there, you will get the hang of it. It takes a little bit of practice. In our third example, we have 3 over y plus 5 over y minus 2. Notice here I have y minus 2. Y minus 2 is one package. It's like the y and the 2 are married. They're married with a subtraction symbol. This side over here, I simply have a y. I look at each of these things and I say, what does it need? Well, this side needs a y minus 2. This side over here needs a y. So in order to get my common denominator, I'll multiply this first fraction here by y minus 2 over y minus 2. The other side I'll multiply by y over y. And what does that give me? Well, I have 3 times y minus 2 over y times y minus 2. Over here I have 5 times y over y times y minus 2. Now that I've done that, I now have a common denominator, and once I have a common denominator, I can rewrite it into one big fraction. I have the y and the y minus 2 in the denominator, and I have the 3 times y minus 2 right there, the 5y right there. Now let's do some cleaning up. We'll use the distributive property. 3y minus 6 plus 5y over the common denominator. And now I can combine like terms. 3y and 5y is 8y minus 6, again over my common denominator. And finally, I can factor and cancel. The numerator factors to 2 times 4y minus 3, and the denominator is already factored for me. There's nothing here that cancels, and so this is the sum of these two fractions written in simplest form. We can't forget our undefined or excluded values. It's undefined at y equals 0 or 2. Example 4 is for you to try. It actually looks very much like this, and I'd like for you to take a look at that and see how you do. Please pause the video here. Let's see how you did. We have 2 over y minus 4 plus 4 over y plus 2. I took a look at each of the denominators. This side needs a y plus 2. This side needs a y minus 4. And so I create a common denominator by multiplying this side by y plus 2 over y plus 2. This side over here by y minus 4 over y minus 4. Now I have common denominators, and so I can take my fractions and push them together. I have the 2 times y plus 2 plus 4 times y minus 4 over the common denominator. Now we can use the distributive property, combine like terms, and factor. Once we factor, we can go through and cancel anything out that's identical. We have y plus 2 in both the numerator and the denominator, and so we're left with 6 over y minus 4. Don't forget your undefined or excluded values. We cannot have y be negative 2 or positive 4. The next example is a little interesting. We have denominators, but the denominator is pretty cool here because take a look. It can be factored. And here's the truth of the matter. Whenever you're adding and subtracting, and you're looking for a common denominator, always begin by factoring the denominators. You can leave the numerator like it is, but we need to factor the denominator. When I factor the denominator, I have y plus 4, y minus 4. Over here I have y minus 4. Let's see what pieces each of these fractions are missing. This has a y minus 4, and so does this one. This has a y plus 4, but this one does not. This one needs the y plus 4. I give it that by multiplying by y plus 4 over y plus 4, top and bottom. Now I have a common denominator, y plus 4, y minus 4, y plus 4, y minus 4. I can rewrite it as one fraction. Y times y plus 4 minus 32 over the common denominator. Now we can use the distributive property. We have y squared plus 4y minus 32 over the common denominator. Once we've done all that work, and we have done a lot of work so far, we can go ahead and factor the numerator. Sometimes it can't be factored, but a lot of times it can. The numerator here factors to y plus 8 and y minus 4. Now we can go through and cancel things out. And notice here, my y minus 4 and my y minus 4 cancel each other out. I'm left with y plus 8 over y plus 4. Don't forget the undefined or excluded values. Y cannot be positive or negative 4. Now, there was just a lot of information that I shared with you, especially in the last example. Just remember, when you add or subtract, you need a common denominator. begin by factoring the denominators and seeing what things, what terms, each of them needs. This one had a y plus 4 and a y minus 4. This one here only had y minus 4, and so I gave it the other one in the numerator and the denominator. Then I distributed, combined like terms, factored, and canceled. The final example today, example 6, is for you to try, and it's actually very similar to this one. So I'm going to recommend that you use this example as your guide in order to try the final example, number 6. Please pause the video here and then come on back when you're finished. Let's see how you did. We have b plus 2 over b minus 3 minus 15 over b squared minus 3b. We're adding or subtracting, in this case subtracting, and so we know we need common denominators. We begin by factoring the bottom of each of the fractions. This does not factor, but this one did. It's b times b minus 3. Now, to have a common denominator, each fraction has to have the same pieces. This has b minus 3, and so does this. That's good news. This side has a b, and this side does not have a plain old b, so we have to multiply by b over b. Then, once we have our common denominators, we can push everything together into one big fraction. Finally, we use the distributive property, b squared plus 2b minus 15, and we factor and cancel. We factor the numerator, we end up with b plus 5 and b minus 3, and we have our denominator factored, b times b minus 3. Our b minus 3's canceled out. We're left with b plus 5 over b, with our excluded values being 0 and 3. So, what's the deal with this? Well, it's a lot of work. Because you cannot add fractions or subtract fractions that don't have common denominators, you're forced to do a little bit of work to force them to have them. And then you have to do a little work to clean it up. For example, distributing, combining like terms, and then factoring. These take a little bit of practice and a little bit of getting used to, but it's nothing you can't handle. You really have all the tools you need in order to do this. All you need is a little bit of patience and the willingness to take some time to practice. That's everything you need to know about adding and subtracting rational expressions that do not have common denominators.